Mr. Prime Minister, thank you first for having me in today. And the first thing I would like to talk to you about is foreign policy. And the number one foreign policy issue that many people in Ethiopia are concerned and always talking about is Eritrea. It's kind of a hot-button issue. And there's been word that I heard recently you may have shaken hands with Isaias Afwerki. I don't know about that. I'll have to ask you if that's correct. And that there might be some move toward restarting a dialogue. Do you have any words? Did you have any words with him? And is there any move in the works that would lead to an improvement of relations with Eritrea?
Thank you very much, Peter. As far as our foreign policy as regards to Eritrea is concerned, there is no change in policy. Our policy has been designed, after the war, since the last 9 years. It's a standing policy that we need to have a dialogue without any condition. And we feel that dialogue is the only way that we can normalize our relationship. And so we offered this to the Eritrean government and leadership. And we were waiting for this to happen for the last 9 years, and we'll continue to do so from now onwards as well. So there is no foresee any change in policy, because we are the ones who were in the receiving end, and we are the ones who offered this policy direction. We usually call it a 5-point peace deal and a peace strategy, and I think this is standing. It's on the table still now, and we want a round-table discussion dialogue to continue on with the Eritrea regime to normalize our relationship. So it is still a continuing job. Mm-hmm. As far as the shaking of hands is concerned, we have no problem with persons in Eritrea, and it is a regime's problem. And this, if it happens, it doesn't matter anyway. But that didn't happen.
It didn't happen. Okay. The next question has to do with Egypt. Your background is academics, and if I'm not mistaken, you have a degree in water engineering. During the last couple of years, the issue of sharing Nile waters has come to the fore, and tensions have risen a little bit between Cairo and Addis. In the past few days, Egyptian officials have suggested, at least privately, that Ethiopia might have acted too harshly in its approach on the water issue. Concurrently, Egypt's foreign ministry said this week that it sent an inquiry to Ethiopia over reports that a number of Egyptians had been in Ethiopian prisons since their arrest over the failed attempt to assassinate Hosni Mubarak in 1995. All this might indicate that Egypt is seeking to maybe push the reset button, as we say in the United States, in relations with Ethiopia. First, do you have anything to offer on the issue of the prisoners? And could a government that you lead possibly adopt a more conciliatory tone than your predecessor on the Nile water issue?
First of all, Peter, as far as the foreign policy regarding the Nile issue and Egyptian-Ethiopian bilateral issues as concerned, you don't need to be a water engineer, because it's very clear to all ordinary Ethiopian that the Nile issue is an issue which has been there for centuries, not in this regime, but in the previous Ethiopian regime, including starting from the Pharaoh time in Egypt. So this is a continuing issue, and not only an issue of Ethiopia alone, but all the Nile riparian countries, both upstream countries as well as downstream countries. So this is an issue of international, transboundary rivers issue. In this regard, Ethiopia has been very generous in trying to make deal with the lower riparian countries, Sudan and Egypt. Not specifically to Egypt, because they are the ones who are sharing the water by themselves. And so we in upper riparian countries, we have come to an agreement that there should be equitable utilization of the water resources in the Nile basin. And this is an important issue because Ethiopia as a country contributing 86% of the Nile water. If you say that you are not able and you are not eligible for using this water for economic and social development of the country, it becomes a calculation that a full man can do. Otherwise, any Ethiopian, you don't need to be a water engineer to understand this issue. It's very simple and logical issue that Ethiopia always aspires to utilize without making any harm, any significant harm to the downstream countries like Sudan and Egypt. Technically, there is possibility, there is a way out that without harming the downstream countries, we can utilize the water upstream. So as far as this solution is on our hand, why don't we come and cooperate in this regard? So Ethiopia embarked on constructing dams for energy development at this moment, because this is not a consumptive use of water, which can also support the economic development in Sudan, Egypt, and all other Horn of Africa countries. So in this regard, it is a win-win, and it is a cooperative way of doing things, and we have to come together. By the way, Ethiopia has offered a very transparent and visible offer to Egypt and Sudan, and we finally agreed to have a panel of experts, both from Egypt and Sudan, including Ethiopia, and also international experts, to see into this issue, whether there is any impact that's going to occur because of the construction of the new, Great Renaissance Dam in Ethiopia. So this offer by Ethiopia and the late Prime Minister shows that we are very keen to see that there should be a cooperative way of doing and developing together. Nile is not the only issue that we can work together to develop together. Nile is the basic issue, the central issue for our diplomacy and economic integration, but also it is not the only way. We can trade, we can invest, we can work people-to-people relationship, and we can foster in many ways our relationship with Egypt and Sudan. The problem was the previous Egyptian government. We wait and see the current government how it's going to act. But the previous regime was engaging and looking into the Nile issue as a security issue. And it is not a foreign diplomacy and foreign ministry matter. It has been a security issue, and the file was given to the security chief that should follow it. And there are a number of rumors going on that it is a security issue and Egypt looks into it as a security issue. But I cannot now tell you the current government's position until now. The transitional government was in line with us, and some of the leaders are also part of the new government, and we are looking into it because the ongoing process of the panels working on this issue has not been hampered. It was a smooth working relationship now going on. But our issue is that the Nile shouldn't be an issue of mistrust. It should be an issue of an engagement of trust and mutual cooperation and mutual benefit, and also an issue of developing together, an issue of a win-win solution. So this is possible. This is possible, and we will work towards that end. And I think this is an important issue. We don't see as a confrontational issue this matter. There is no need to confront in this issue, because if we develop the 6,000 megawatt of energy, I think we can coordinate and we can integrate, we can connect with each other, so that every one of us can use from the Nile water with endowment Ethiopia has because of its highland nature of the geography, and developing a hydropower in this regard is very important. And if you see Sudan, because of the development of this dam, Sudan will get a regulated water, and Sudan has enough land for agriculture compared to Ethiopia, which is endowment as well. So, if there is irrigated agriculture in Sudan, it means that we can all benefit from the output of this production. Similarly, also in Egypt. So I think it is a win-win, a cooperative way of working together, and we shouldn't see it as a security matter. We should see it as an integration matter. We should see it as a cooperation matter. We should see it as an issue that benefits all the countries and the people of this Eastern Nile Basin countries, Ethiopia, Egypt, and Sudan. So I do not want to deal with those speculations which are going, because we haven't come across officially a change in policy with the current Egyptian government.
Okay. What about the issue of these prisoners?
Thank you very much. I think this is an issue which has been closed with the previous regime. Terrorist actions in any form are not advisable and acceptable. And the Ethiopian court has decided a life sentence to those who tried to kill the previous president of, a death sentence. And that has been completed during the time of the previous regime. So there is no point of discussion at this moment.
Okay, so that's a closed matter at the moment.
It's a closed matter.
All right. Critics have said, I should say, your predecessor often talked admiringly of the Chinese system and China as a rising economic power. He was sometimes also disparaging toward the West, which he saw as a power in decline. The EPRDF has widely publicized its close ties to China's Communist Party. Do you share the views that the West is in economic decline, and it would be in Ethiopia's best interests to foster stronger ties to what is being seen as the rising superpower with an ideology that might be closer to yours?
First of all, our relationship with countries is not based on ideology. It is based on our benefit that we get out of this relationship. Last time also you interviewed me the same question, and I replied to you in the same manner. So we have a strategic relationship between both the United States and as well as China. This strategic partnership has its own dimension when it comes to specific country. Mm-hmm. United States has been a very close ally with Ethiopia in economic development, and especially in areas like agriculture and as well as in the health sector. We have gotten lots of, and also humanitarian assistance. So this support was, very great, and we are still grateful to the government and people of the United States for this support. And we are also strategic allies in terms of peace and security in the region, and not only in the region but globally. And also we are working very closely to have a fair and equitable world together in forums like G20, G8, and climate change, all issues. So we have global, regional, as well as bilateral issues working together with the United States as a strategic ally. So it is not based on ideology at all. And second, with China, China is our strategic ally in terms of supporting us in infrastructure development and investment. There is lots of Chinese foreign direct investment coming to Ethiopia. By the way, there is an increase also in foreign direct investment from the United States and Europe. But still, we are ideology blind in this regard. What benefits our people, what benefits our country, is our national interest, which pushes us to have a relationship with countries. So our diplomacy is very clear, and our foreign relationship is very transparent. So it's not based on ideology. Our party has very close ties with the Communist Party of China because we have areas where we can learn from, the work which the Chinese Communist Party is doing. Simply because we are people-centered, development-oriented policy, where Chinese Communist Party has an experience in working with people at the grassroots. So we learn from China this kind of approaches, and therefore it doesn't mean that our ideology is similar to that of China. But there are best practices you can take from every country, which is possible, from every party. And you know that we are a progressive left party. And not only we work with China, but we have a relationship with the German Social Democratic Party because of our inclination towards the left views. So it is an inclination. We work with ANC, we work with all social democratic parties in Europe, and including the Labour Party in United Kingdom. So it is not specific to certain parties, but you get lessons from one to the other. So I think it is not ideologically driven and based, but getting the basic principles. We feel that we have our own unique ideology in Ethiopia, which is our own, our national. But there are similarities on one way and differences on the other. But when we lean towards some issues which are beneficial to our own party, then we get lessons and experience. That doesn't mean that we apply it directly, but we see it, how to adapt it to our own situation in Ethiopia and the party itself, internal mechanisms of the party. So I think we are ready to work with all Socialist International membership parties in the globe. There are a number of them from Europe, United States, from China, and other parts of the globe.
Mm-hmm. One of the first things that Ethiopians notice about the change from Prime Minister Meles to you is that you're not part of the ethnic minority group that led the armed struggle and is perceived as having ruled the country, somewhat to the exclusion of larger ethnic groups. Can you say that the Tigrayan influence on Ethiopian politics is in decline? And how do you answer skeptics who'd say that the TPLF is still in control behind the scenes?
Well, first of all, if you want to understand the whole situation, you have to understand our party. Our party is a coalition of four major parties in the country. One is TPLF, the other one is the Amhara National Democratic Movement, and the third one is the Oromo People's Democratic Organization, OPDO, and the FIBS is the Southern Ethiopian People's Democratic Movement, SEPDM. So these are the four coalitions of EPRDF. EPRDF was initially being established by the two, parties, which has been an armed struggle in the northern part of Ethiopia. And TPLF was the pioneer of this struggle, and so later on joined by the Amhara National Democratic Movement. And then again OPDO, finally after the overthrow of Derg, the Southern Ethiopia, People's Democratic Movement has joined EPRDF and has become a member of EPRDF. So this is the genesis of the formation of parties. So accordingly, then the strengths and the capability of the parties, the experience differs from party to party. But after the renewal process, after the last 10 years, since the last 10 years, the renewal process has brought up a refined strategy and policy and line of the party. So in this regard, all the parties has gone into a new movement and has become parties which has embraced, the same line, the same experience, the same way of working in the internal party system, and almost equitable way of engagement. So even though there are natural differences, with experience everywhere, there is natural differences in the experience of the struggle. So I think we see that all the four parties has equal settings in all EPRDF mechanisms, like the council and the party congress and all the assignments. These parties has become equal, and the witness is I am the product of this process. So it is a living witness. For those who speculate that EPRDF is biased towards certain groups or ethnic groups, and it is based on the powerful influence of this or the other group, is a false and unwarranted speculation. So we see internally on our party system, the first and the foremost thing is a democratic discourse. Internal party democracy is the basis of our strength. So for those who are thinking from outside, they think without knowing the inside of the party. We have to explain this properly to those who are confused because they don't understand the party mechanism and how the party operates. This party is internally a democratic party, and all its engagements, decisions are made in a democratic fashion. Therefore, you cannot say that this or the other party is influencing or overriding the other one, because all the four parties are equal number of constituents, individuals that constitute the EPRDF, and they have all the influence necessary if they want in a democratic process. So, the most important thing is the democracy within the party is alive, and it is a vibrant one. So in this regard, I do not buy those speculations which people say accordingly. As a merit suggests, I have been elected, almost unanimously by all the three parties. Not only my own parties, Southern Ethiopia People's Democratic Movement, but all three parties. Had it been this kind of issue, is within us. And if there is no internal democracy, we would have ended up in a partisan way of doing things. So the live example is my appointment as a chair of the EPRDF and later on as a prime minister of the country. So I think somebody has to understand very well the internal democratic politics within the party in order to understand the whole speculations that has been portrayed by many, which is, of course, a false speculation.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that there are elections coming up in 2015? Will you stand for election? Do you hope to be the leader of your party for more than just this caretaker period, the end of this term?
Before the party congress allows, let me say, Mr. President Obama to become the candidate for the presidency, then Obama would say that I will be the candidate without the decision of these party members? No. Similarly, it is a decision of the party congress and the party process. It's a democratic one. So if the party gives me that chance, I will go for it. If the party doesn't give me this chance, then I will go for other jobs. That has to be done. So it's a democratic process, and a person cannot decide, like me and myself at this moment, how the majority of the party institutions decide upon the issues for tomorrow. So I think this is a question that could be asked not for a democratic party, but for a democratic party working in a democratic process. You cannot predict what's going to happen. It depends on the membership. It depends on their evaluation, and it depends on their decision whether they put me as a candidate for this or not.
You've described Ethiopia as a dominant party system. How long does the EPRDF need before it changes and is more accepting of the growth of other parties, multi-parties?
This is also a dynamic process. that you cannot say that I put this timeline so that I will reduce my dominance or the other parties will come. It depends on the dynamics of the process. But the wish of us is to make it shorter, because the more vibrant the democratic parties come in this country, the more people will get choice for their decision. But for us, what matters is not the number of parties. What matters is the parties which work for the people. Parties those are engaged in their policies and the strategies that support the aspiration of the people and their membership. So I think the most, preferable way is the faster that vibrant and strong parties emerge in a country, so that the dominance of one party, becomes, with alternative of others coming for the people to choose among. That doesn't mean that EPRDF is going to lose the dominance if the people choose to do so. So there are some parties in Europe who stayed in power for 50, 60 years, and in Japan for many, many years. So, party like EPRDF can stay in power for several years, as we said, with a generation of leadership, taking responsibility from one generation to the other one as a rally. But it depends on the dynamics of the process, and that also I cannot predict exactly when.
Ethiopia has been criticized in some quarters for its tight control over the flow of information. Critical newspapers have been forced to close. Journalists have been accused of violating anti-terrorism laws, and websites have been blocked. Even VOA has been jammed, foreign broadcast jammed. What would your government do, particularly in these high-profile cases, in particular the case of the newspaper Fitte and others that have been closed, and the jailing of a very critical blogger, journalist, Iskender Nega?
I know that these are your friends, and you are so much sympathetic about them. The only thing is, Peter, you have to understand that anybody who has two hats should stop to wear two hats and should wear only one hat in a possible way. These two hats are one hat in a legal system and legally operating, on the other hand, having the other hat which is illegal and violent, working with the violent organizations. So people who are arrested in Ethiopia are not arrested because or convicted because they are working in a legal and legal manner. And those who are arrested has a connection with violent organizations. And they are not convicted because of their journalistic business. And it is allowed. You have been there, you have been operating there, but you shouldn't cross the red line to have a connection and supporting the violent organizations, terrorist organizations. If that's the case, I think it's a national security matter. And it's a different thing. It's not journalism. It is not opposition. Opposition doesn't operate in an illegal and a violent manner, connecting itself with, by the way, with terrorist groups. These are individuals, actually, not parties. We have never convicted any party, because we know that those legally registered parties can operate legally in the country. But individuals who are registered with these parties, but having two registration, one registration with the legal parties, the other registration with illegal and violent terrorist parties, they will be convicted for not the legal hat, but for the other hat, which is illegal, violent, and connection with terrorist organizations. Mm-hmm. So we have to differentiate between the two. If they stop clearly and equivocally, without any hesitation, to work on the legal spectrum, it is always the room is there, the space is there. But if they mix the two, then we delineate between the legal one and the illegal, violent terrorist one, and for the action, which is in the second hat, the violent and terrorist connection and support, then that will be convicted according to the law of the land and will be punishable. I think these differences should be understood. For you, in the United States, it's not a problem because journalists do not go illegal way. They go for legal, and they have only one hat. They do not have a mixed hat. So that's the difference between here and Ethiopia. And usually the Western countries do not understand this mix because they do not have this problem. They just see that all journalists work in a legal manner. And they don't have this problem of illegal and the other hat. So that difference sometimes is confused. And as far as we are concerned, we focus for our national, security interest. And that our national security interest cannot be compromised somebody having a two hat. We want to tell them properly that they have to have only one hat, which is legal, and the legal way of doing things, be it in journalism or in opposition, discourse. But if they opt to have two mixed, functions, then we are very clear to differentiate the two, and people should be questioned for their illegal and violent terrorist connection.
And what will be your government's position on maybe possibly opening up a little bit on the issue of press freedom? Right now, websites are blocked, foreign broadcasts jammed, and newspapers have been closed.
This, I think, should be very clear that my government has no policy of blocking these issues. It is, depending on the websites or whatever what comes in. If there is any connection with this kind of organizations, it's obvious. That's done in every country. You cannot open a blog of Osama bin Laden in the United States. It's all the same.
Now, one last foreign policy question. I know I'm probably overstaying, but Sudan, the Sudanese, the leaders of Sudan and South Sudan were in Addis Ababa this week, and Ethiopia has been playing a mediating role all along. Prime Minister Meles got great accolades for the work he did. How are you? Are you able to follow up, or was this a personal thing that Mr. Meles had with the two sides?
Luckily today, exactly 5 minutes ago, they signed an agreement. And thank you very much for this question. I was watching from New York, directly live transmission from Addis. And they have concluded the agreement and signed. Of course, our policy is consistent. Prime Minister Meles, late Prime Minister Meles, has made a great contribution for the peace and the stability in Sudan. And the peace and stability prevails in Sudan. And he has levered a lot in this regard. And his skill in negotiation and support has yielded the result. But of course, after he was sick and after his days, his passing away, I have taken the responsibility to continue on with his footsteps. And I was working together with the leaders of both Sudan and South Sudan for the last 1 week. And luckily, since he has made a good foundation, Ethiopia has been respected in the mediation and negotiation process. And we have broken a deal. Mm-hmm. And in this regard, I am grateful for the leadership of both Sudan and South Sudan, working together with Ethiopia and the African Union High Implementation Panel. And finally, they came to an agreement on almost all issues except Abiy. But Abiy also, they decided that let the African Union Peace and Security Council decide on it, and then they want to abide on the decision of the African Union. The only problem was they agreed to have a referendum for Abiy, but who is going to chair the referendum commission? That was the disagreement, and they want the African Union Peace and Security Council to decide on who should be chairing this referendum commission. And I think that's not a big issue and can be worked out and sorted out by the African Union Peace and Security Council. But our policy was consistent. We want to have a Horn of Africa, which is a peaceful, integrated, and working for the prosperity of the people of the Horn of Africa. And as chair of IGAD, we have been working very hard, and we'll continue to do that. Luckily, we have had also a good deal in Somalia. Somalia have completed its transition period and had a very good person as a president at this moment. And the system of parliament has started to operate properly. And in the coming 4 years, this leadership will work out for a greater democratic and a country which has good economic prosperity and a stable one in the Horn of Africa. So similarly, we'll continue on to have a peace deal with Eritrea as well. So the Horn of Africa will be peaceful and a stable area for whatever investment as well as economic prosperity.
As I close, I have to ask, there seems to be a great fascination in your country all of a sudden with your wife. I know you don't necessarily want to get into your private life, but she seems to be quite a dynamic woman. And can you tell us a little bit about her and how she has worked with you during these years?
Peter, thank you very much for that. This is her matter, and I think she has to respond. And when you get time, please ask her for that. But personally, my wife is a dynamic, as you said. She's a very respectable woman, and I always respect her for her achievements, and I love her too.
Thank you very much. One last thing. Can I ask you just for a few words in Amharic for the people, for our listeners in Amharic?
I don't know what I'm going to say in Amharic, and you don't understand it. So
I don't understand.
I will work with VOA Amharic service from Addis. That would be nice.
You will?
Yes.
That's great to hear, because we feel that sometimes both sides are suffering because of the estranged relationship with the Amharic service.
Amharic service, you have to work very hard to see it as a VOA principled service, because we know that people in Amharic service are tending towards their own ideology rather than as a non-partisan, a journalistic and broadcasting service. If they stop this and be non-partisan and do whatever good for the democratization and good governance of the country and economic prosperity, I think that would help us. But if you go on, destabilizing the country, media is an important tool for prosperity as well as destabilization. You can use in both ways. So they have to stop trying to destabilize this country in terms of instigating certain issues which are not true on the ground, sensational issues which are bringing some kind of ethnic violence and religious, clashes. And they have to stop this kind of, instigations. And if that is the case, I think if they become realistic, there is no problem with us.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. You've been very generous with your time.
Thank you so much.
And may you have the best of luck in your job.
I wish you also the same.
Thank you.
Thank you.